for this webinar. My name is Iguma Gabriel. I'll be your moderator today, and we are glad that you're joining us for this morning discussion. We apologize for starting a few minutes late, I think about 3 minutes late. We're sorry for, we just had one or two things to fix before we could let you in, but we are glad that you're here for this discussion and here on time. As we just allow for more people to log on, I'll just share with you the program for today. So there on your screens should be our program for today. Whereas we did start late, we intend to end on time, so please do not worry. I'd also like to let you know that all our panelists are in, and so the names that you see there, everyone that's on that list is already logged in and ready to have our discussion for the day. So thank you very much, every participant, for making time to be part of this very important discussion. All right, just a few things as we allow for more people to log on. Our discussion today is going to focus on medicines and biologics, and I'm sure you already know that. I know that you want to contribute to the discussion by asking a question or by sending in a comment. Today we'll be using the tab at the bottom of your screen that's labeled Q&A. So if you could just use Q&A at any point during the webinar, you can write your question or put your comment there. To the panelists, please keep checking occasionally the Q&A tab. If there's a question directed at you, please go ahead and respond to the question in that tab. Excellent. All right, we would like to kick this off and would like to begin with a word of prayer. So I'd like to invite Angelina Twinomujuni to lead us in a word of prayer as we start. Angelina, over to you.
Okay. Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you that your mercies are new every morning and great is your faithfulness. We thank you, Lord, for what you are doing this morning through the Medicines and Biologics webinar. We invite your presence, Almighty God. Lord, we pray that you would give us wisdom in our deliberations and that we would come up with recommendations which can be used to strengthen and transform this sector. We ask that your peace would guard our hearts and minds. We ask, Lord, that you would be a part of this meeting to the glory and honor of your name. In Jesus' name we've prayed and believed. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Angelina. The other thing I need to mention is during the course of the webinar, we will have poll questions show up on your screen. The poll questions will be centered on, a particular aspect for us to know what the participants think about, a particular aspect. So when the poll question appears on your screen, just take some time to read through it and choose the option that most applies to you. Now, panelists, unfortunately, in this case, you are the Electoral Commission. You are not taking part in the poll. Even if you try, the system will not allow you to vote. So as the panelists, will only be able to see the results of the poll. So we shall not participate. We shall only be spectators. That's only for the poll question. And the poll questions will flash on your screen every 30 or so minutes, but I will call it out before the poll question comes on. Excellent. Now, these webinars are organized by the Center for Advanced Strategic Leadership, CASO, and therefore at this point it's right and proper to have welcome remarks from a representative of CASO, and I have the honor of inviting Dr. James Magara, the board chair of CASO think tank, to come and give opening remarks. Doctor, over to you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, and a very warm welcome to you on a Saturday morning. A very warm welcome to our panelists. Thank you for giving up some time on Saturday morning to participate in the discussions concerning the sector. The Castle think tank, the Center for Advanced Strategic Leadership, was formed last year, but it's been brewing for a number of years. So last year we formed the organization. Its membership is quite diverse, and that's why we are able to speak on a very wide range of topics. We have a very large number of professionals that are part of the think tank. Last year when we launched it, we addressed the issue of education with an inaugural conference. Interestingly, many of the ideas we had then have been forced on us by COVID-19 because we are looking at the future. We are really a futuristic-based think tank. And we discussed things that seemed very far away. But today, if you look at the newspapers, many of the things that were covered in that conference are actually happening. All these things about distance learning and homeschooling and so on. Now, when the COVID-19 pandemic presented itself, we decided to look at the opportunities that would come. It was a very dark time, if you remember, in March, April, during the lockdown. We changed our whole program for the year and decided that we will look on the bright side. So on the 25th of April, we had a very large workshop, which lasted about 6 hours. We had about 167 people, and they're all divided into their areas of interest. And it was mainly brainstorming. Following on that, we got a multi-sectoral group of people to look at the ideas that were generated through that workshop. And then we decided that it should be time then to test these ideas and bring them out. And this is part of the ongoing process where we get experts to look at some of the ideas that have come up. The whole goal is to contribute towards solving the challenges that we have. So what we are doing today will be captured and will be part of a document that will be circulated to policymakers, decision makers, practitioners, so that we can apply more thought into our journey into the future. We believe that the pandemic provides an opportunity, and in any crisis, there is an opportunity. And if your eyes look closely enough, you will see the opportunity. So thank you once again for coming in this morning. Let's open up our minds. That's what we want. Let's challenge the status quo. Let's look at the reason why things can work. Very often we quickly look at the reason why things cannot work. But I'd like you to put on your thinking cap this morning, and let's look at the reason why things can work. So thank you very much, and have very engaging discussions this morning. Over to you, Gabriel.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Now that Doctor has requested us to put our thinking caps on, I believe we all have them on. Again, if you joined after we had said welcome to everybody, you are very welcome. This is the fifth webinar in a series of webinars organized by the Center for Advanced Strategic Leadership. And these are being held under the theme COVID-19, Opportunity to Thrive. If you missed any of the previous webinars, you actually can access a report from the webinars. Just send an email to connect@castlethinktank.org. The other option is you can go to any of Castle Think Tank's social media pages, and over there you can get the recording, the video of the actual webinar, and that will enable you to follow. Today, we will be focusing on the medicines and biologics sector, and we know that Uganda imports majority of her medicines and biologics. Imagine what this would mean if we had a situation of a complete lockdown, a total lockdown, if our borders were closed completely. Not like the lockdown we just had, because for this lockdown, cargo was able to come into the country. But if for some reason cargo was not able to come into the country, what exactly would happen to this sector? So today, we have the opportunity to think about and to come up with, strategies and steps forward of what we can do to make this sector work for us. In order to kick us off in this discussion, we're going to start with a presentation of a think piece This think piece will be presented by Dr. Vincent Bachenga. He is the current Managing Director and Medical Director of Cambridge Health Incorporated. He's also the current Director, consultant at BNI Uganda chapter. He has also served as the Assistant General Manager and Head of Clinical Operations, AAR, Healthcare Uganda, Medical Officer, Mulago National Referral Hospital in the Clinical Neurosurgery Department at the University of California, Irvine campus. He also served as a Junior Medical Officer with the organ transplant team at Biologics Hospital in Poland, and as a human prospector of the McMinn Color Atlas of Human Anatomy. He holds an MD from University of Lodz in Poland, a master's in public administration of health systems, Clark University in the USA, and his medical science degree. He has a medical science degree from Cambridge University in the United States of America. Please invite with me Dr. Bachenga to give us the think piece. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, for that introduction. I'm humbled by it. Today we are going to go straight into our think piece from Castle, and do join me on this journey. And I pray that you'll find it enlightening. Today I'm just going to be talking about really three key things. I'll be giving you a background to the markets, to the Ugandan market when it comes to medicines and biologics. I'll also be sharing briefly on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, and then lastly on the opportunities and recommendations. Maybe just for clarity, you might hear the words biologics, medicines referred to as pharmaceuticals. So I hope that will not confuse you in any way, because they pretty much relate to the same thing. Thank you. So when we go to the background, what does this space include in our setting, in a Ugandan setting? So the biologics and medicines sector in Uganda really relates to 3 or 4 important things. One is that it relates to human medicines, the drugs that we use for humans. It relates to veterinary drugs. Those are drugs that we use for animals. It also relates to the chemicals that we use for our crops, so fertilizers and things like that. And it also relates to cosmetics, which are chemicals that we use on our bodies. So this industry is largely centered around science, because when it comes to drugs, it's really the epitome of science and research. And it also, in a way, brings a very good interplay between science, capital, and governments, because setting up these plants is naturally very, very expensive, and so is the process. And this is one of the most regulated aspects of any field, the pharmaceutical industry. So the key players in our setting, in the Ugandan setting, are really largely importers. We also have some manufacturers, then we have retailers, because as we all know, we've all seen 1 or 2 pharmacies around the corner. One person that's also very important in our setting is the National Drug Authority, who regulates the quality of the drugs that we have on our market. And of course, we would not have any industry if you did not have customers or purchasers, okay? Because those are also very, very important. Now, to try to put things a little bit more into perspective, there was some research that was done by the Uganda Investment Authority sometime in 2008, and it showed that this industry, the chemical or pharmaceutical industry, was growing anywhere between 4.7 and 5% between the years 2004 and 2008. And again, when you look at the market size, as of 2008, the market size of the pharmaceuticals was estimated at somewhere around 276 million. That's for the whole of East Africa. Now, when you move to 2018, Uganda alone spent about $281 million on importing drugs. Of course, 400 million really relates to the possible size of our market. It's an estimate, and it will generally refer to the drugs that we import, the 281, and roughly about 100 million of drugs that we export as a country. From the manufacturing aspect, we really have only 4 large manufacturers, 6 medium manufacturers, and then 1 small manufacturer. So the size is based on the number of employees, with large plants, which are largely Cipla Quality Chemicals, Abacus, I think there's Rene, and Kampala Pharmaceutical Industries. Those are plants that have more than 100 employees, with the medium ones having anywhere between 30 and 99, and the small ones having below 30. Interestingly, only one of these plants, or these manufacturers that are pointed out, has what we call a WHO Good Manufacturing Practice certification. And that really means that it's only one manufacturer that has access to international markets. We can discuss these things, and you say, why is it important that we discuss this pharmaceutical industry? If you look at the top 3, if you look at the biggest 3 manufacturers for drugs globally, Pfizer, Roche, and Novartis, their annual sales or their annual revenue dwarfs the Ugandan GDP by about 100%. Pfizer about $51.7 billion a year, Roche $50, Novartis $47 billion a year, as opposed to our annual GDP of just 30 billion based on the 2020 projection. We appreciate the power that lies within this industry. That is why 2 key documents, the National Development Plan 2 and 3, have expressly and repeatedly said that, our government and country should target to have about 30% of our exports derived from the science and technology space. As we know, most of our exports currently are largely from the agriculture space, and there would be no better bet for the government to take than to bet on the pharmaceutical or the drugs industry. As we continue now to look at the trends from COVID-19, what was our market space like again? It is a fact that, as I pointed out earlier, that about 90% of the drugs that we use or the chemicals that we use for our farms or on our animals are imported. And this is largely from India, China, and Europe. That means that we are only able to internally manufacture 10% of what we need. The other thing which is very, very important to note is that although we are able to make some drugs, we are not able to make any raw materials. The raw materials are traditionally called active pharmaceutical ingredients in the pharmaceutical language. We are not able to make any of those raw materials. So even for the plants that are able to make, the ARVs, antimalarials, and things like that, we have to import these raw materials from somewhere else. It is also, we all know that we have a relatively active herbal or alternative medicine industry. We all know people like Kazire, Aloysia Organic, and very many other people. But it is important to note that most of these are weak, because even when presented with a COVID pandemic, unlike countries like Madagascar, we have not seen any of them come up and say, here is what I propose as a cure. The other thing that should be noted is that most of their operations border on, there's normally a thin border between alternative medicine, the medicines, and what we call African magic, as people might call it, which further weakens the sector. The other thing that has been a fact is that our research is really, really, really still very young. It's true we do a lot of research on things like malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, and things like that. But when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry, this is elementary research, okay? Because we are really not trying to discover yes, we are discovering groundbreaking things, but we are not at the level that is able to produce new drugs. The other thing which is important is that we are doing too many things, too many departments are doing very many things, but there is no alignment. The people that have the money do not know that they can or to invest in this industry, and the government has also not aligned all its agencies to make sure that these investments in this industry also take off. The other last thing that I need to point out is that for all the things that we are doing, we seem to lack a sense of urgency, okay? So we have 4 relatively large plants and maybe a few more, but the only significant growth that we've seen in this sector over the last 10 years has really been in the number of pharmacy outlets, as opposed to the number or the quantity of what we are able to produce. And this is something that also needs, for us, it's something that we need to think about. Allow me to point out very briefly where our drugs have been coming from. As I pointed out earlier, most of the drugs for Africa have largely come from Europe. Those are the 27 EU states, accounting for about 51.5%, and then about 20% coming from India, with 7.7% from Switzerland, and then a slightly smaller figure from China and from the United States of America. On the other side, when you look at where do our products go when we're able to produce them, majority of our exports actually go to Africa. And this goes to show that if we are able to develop our industry, we would actually not only be growing Uganda, but be growing Africa as a whole. Of course, allow me to point out that although majority of our imports come from Europe, most of those industries, again, depend on factories in India and China for their raw materials. So really the truth of the matter is, although these drugs are coming from Europe and America, most of them are actually, to be very honest, have Indian DNA at their very core. And this one is also something that is very, very important to note, given that, we've previously heard of, potential conflicts between India, between China, and even between the US. And, if those conflicts were to truly get blown out of proportion, we would have real problems, because these are our key sources of pharmaceuticals. What have we found out from when COVID-19 struck? What were the challenges that came to the fore? We all know the story of the trucks, okay? It's very clear that as a country, we are heavily dependent on a supply chain that is external. And as such, again, as Gabriel pointed out, if we were able to, our borders were to be closed permanently, we would have a real problem. The other thing which is very clear is that, when COVID came to the fore, just one man alone, Bill Gates, was able to stand and say, I'm going to stake my own $100 million towards finding a cure for this problem. The question is, how much as a nation have we been staking on finding cures and solutions to our problems here from a pharmaceutical perspective? As I pointed out again, our industry is largely immature. It's not able to bring new molecules to the fore. And the other thing which is also very, very troubling is that we are not able to quantify, or we've not been able to collect data in a scientific and organized way. It's very true, we have data all over the place. We have data at Uganda Bureau of Statistics, we have data in Ministry of Health, we have data in NDA, but there is no place where we can have that data in an aggregated point so that decisions can be made. And that is indeed a problem, because even when it came to the point of saying, let's now make masks, the government started asking and saying, who is it that can make masks? Even that information was not readily available. The other thing that is actually a good thing, but also a real challenge, is that our industry or our country depends heavily on donations for drugs, especially for essential drugs for HIV, TB, and malaria. Now, there's no problem with donations. We all want donations. But the truth is that when these institutions donate drugs to us, these development partners, when these drugs end up on our market, they are not able, our local markets, our local drugs that are made here are not able to compete with them, because when they get here, they are much cheaper than what we produce here. And what does that do? That, in a way, ends up killing our local markets, because if I can buy things cheaper from India, it does not make sense for me to manufacture them here, and that is not a very good thing. The other thing that has actually come to the fore, we've actually noticed that as a regional market, as the East African community, we are very, very fragmented. Of course, we've seen for example, in our different approaches to how we handled Corona, but it's also clear that we have not been able, for example, to approach these development partners. We have not been able to approach the people that manufacture the raw materials as a group. And because we are not approaching them as a group, we go as small individuals, and we do not get the best competitive terms. And this is something that we need to address, and address urgently. The last challenge that might possibly not be known to very many people is the issue of legislation. Uganda is a signatory to a treaty called the Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property, which was effected by the World Trade Organization in 1994 and signed here in Uganda sometime in the early 2000s. And what this law says is that Uganda is able to receive affordable medicines from development partners, but in exchange, there are things that we cannot do. So for example, we are not able to patent things like mathematical formulae. We are not able to patent new drugs. We are not able to patent vaccines. And of course, it makes sense because they are giving us donations. It would make sense that they're able to protect their home industries, which we would otherwise start competing with. The only good thing from this, the other good thing from this legislation is that we were also then allowed to get patents, existing patents from international manufacturers, which were able to then effect here. For example, that is how people like Quality Chemicals were able to get their licenses to be able to make drugs here. And this was initially supposed to end in 2016, but we have been allowed the window to 2023 for us to use patents that have not been developed here in the country. And again, when it comes to the issue of urgency, who knows what will happen when we come to 2023? They might tell us that then it is not possible for us to use any of those patents. And that is why it is imperative that we act with a sense of urgency in developing our own industry. We have been thinking for a long time that, we can make steady progress, we can make incremental thinking and incremental progress in this industry. But it has dawned upon us that we actually must find a way to make exponential growth. And it is my belief and hope that today marks a day when we start thinking and growing exponentially by being able to scale up our actions, by being able to seek synergies, and hopefully we will be able to see results come at a faster and also at a faster pace, and also with greater scale.
Right.
Well, Ugandans are very good at stating problems. We've stated the problems, but now how do we solve these problems? We have very, very simple solutions that we propose. Number one, we propose that as a nation, we set up what we call a National Institute of Health, or a National Health Institute. We are aware that we currently have the National Drug Authority. The National Drug Authority has a very clear role to monitor the quality of the drugs. It is important that we have an institute that is separate from that, and we can. This can be set up over 3 years. And we believe that it will do a lot of good. We also would propose that the government is able to give direct budget support to research. We also know that there are very many incentives that are available, tax incentives. There's normally talk of being given cheaper power, cheaper water. There are very many incentives, but most of these incentives are in very many places. For example, if you want cheaper land, you have to go to Uganda Investment Authority. If you want taxes, you have to go to Uganda Revenue Authority. We need to find a way of making sure that these incentives can actually be put in one place. And these incentives especially can drive the national agenda and also attract people to invest in this industry. The other point I want to make is that we need to be able to encourage people to do what we call reverse engineering. Traditionally, bringing a new drug to the market takes anywhere between 5, 10 to even 15 years. So what we encourage is that as a nation, we should start by packaging. We should start by encouraging people to package drugs here. Then they can go into active manufacturing. And after that, we can work our way towards discovery of new drugs. We also propose that we also actively assist manufacturers to get WHO GMP certification, because that is the only way how we'll be able to open international markets for our products, especially from this industry. The power of what we can do as East Africa cannot be overstated. We are 177 million people versus 40 million people here in Uganda. Let us see whether we can bargain collectively to get the best product. To get the best product and the best deal. What will all these recommendations do as I conclude? The National Institute of Health should be able to accelerate our ability to get what we call bankable research, not research that we do when we are getting a diploma and we put it in a file, but it should be research that can be turned into commodities, into drugs that we can sell on the market. This institute should also ideally help us to source funding for this market, and that will accelerate how fast the market is able to move. We all know that developing drugs is very, very expensive. In the absence of budget support, which we have again requested that is spread over the next 5 years to a maximum of 5% of the national budget, it's not going to be able to develop these novel drugs that we wish for. Again, I've explained how the reverse engineering would help us, but importantly, we should be looking to set up a regional ecosystem that aims to have 50% of all the drugs and chemicals that we need manufactured here locally in Uganda and 30% manufactured within the region. And this we should aim to be able to do within the next 10 years. Ladies and gentlemen, it is very clear. If we fail to work towards more self-sufficiency in the medicine and biologics industry, this could in fact be a matter of life and death. We all know that a very simple change in the law or attitude, what it did in the marijuana industry, because overnight we had more than 20 companies registered, because there was a slight change in the law. We can do this, and I have every confidence that this nation can rise to the occasion. I want to thank you on my own behalf and on behalf of CASO for your attention, and I look forward to very interesting deliberations today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Doctor, thank you very much. But before you go, just one or two things to clarify. You did mention that out of the 4 large plants we have in Uganda, only one is WHO GMP certified. You didn't say which one.
That would be CIPLA quality chemicals.
Okay. All right, excellent. Then there is a question from Mr. Kamya. If you could go to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, please respond to Mr. Kamya.
Sorry, I can't. Yes, please.
Yes. There's a question from Mr. Kamya.
Can I please have?
If you go to the Q&A, if you go to the Q&A tab, you'll be able to see the question from Mr. Kamya.
I'll respond to it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you very much.
And this goes to all the panelists. The participants.
Gabriel, you're muted. Gabriel, you're muted.
Yes, now I am back on. Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent. Yes, we're getting some interruptions, so somehow we muted everybody, ended up muting myself as well. Apologies for that. I was just letting you know who we have as our panelists, so that as you ask your questions, you can even direct your question to a person who hasn't spoken yet. For example, we had a Dr. just referred to NDA, and we have the Secretary of the Authority, National Drugs Authority, as one of our panelists, Dr. David Nahamia. He will be speaking to us later on. We have Dr. Grace Nambatia, she's Natural Chemotherapeutics Research Laboratory, Ministry of Health. We will hear from her. Like I told you earlier on, Dr. Neva Okuna, Commissioner of Pharmaceuticals and Herbals, Ministry of Health, is our special guest today. We're glad to have her. And finally, Dr. Stephen Birungi, Managing Director of Alphasan Uganda. Those are our panelists. We'll be hearing from them. We've already heard from Dr. Vincent Bachenga. I'd like now to go to our next, to our discussant, our first discussant for today, Dr. Grace Nambatia. She's currently the Director of Research, Natural Chemotherapeutics Research Laboratory at the Ministry of Health. Nambatia was appointed chairperson of the Public-Private Partnerships in Health at the Ministry of Health and the Herbal Committee of the National Drugs Authority. She's also a Rotarian with the Rotary Club of Muyenga. Her support to fellow women and the community has enabled her to win the 2006 Professional Women of the Year Award from the British Council. She has developed a skin ointment called Genuine Natural Products out of aloe vera, which she says has 100% natural herbs and has successfully cured several skin diseases. She holds a postgraduate diploma in education, a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry, and a Master of Science degree in medical chemistry, and a doctorate in the same field from Loughborough University in the UK. Nambatia is still set on getting a master's in business administration, and her education and experience have helped her in teaching the community about herbal medicine. Dr. Nambatia, you are welcome to have your discussion, and please start with a critique of what Doctor just shared with us, what Dr. Bachenga shared with us. Over to you, Dr. Nambatia.
Thank you. Happy to be here this morning.
Dr. Nambatia, just a second. If you have another device next to you that's logged in, could you please mute it, because we're getting feedback.
Okay. Okay, it's muted.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, I thank Dr. Bachenga. There were some interruptions, but I managed to listen in at least to hear, can comment on the issue of the way our herbal medicine is not well supported. The sector is weak. I can agree with that. And I would love to probably throw lights on why it's weak. First of all, we have issues of mindset, especially mindset of the educated. I think the colonial mentality is still so much with us, in a sense that we were trained not to, we were dislinked from our heritage. You know, we tend to deny what would really be our great source of health. And the policies that should be in place, I mean, lack of policies, like lack of a policy on traditional and complementary medicine makes things very difficult. And we really now seeing biodiversity disappearing because there is no anchoring law against which to really argue that if you're planting pine, eucalyptus, the way we're seeing landscapes as we go, you know, up country, we're really missing out on the biodiversity. And our leaders one gets surprised because the traditional and complementary medicine bill was passed through Parliament last year in February, but up to now it has not been assented to by the president, and that makes a very big challenge when it comes to research, where we still even lack a research policy. So that implies that we can't even anchor our bilateral partners because of lack of a policy. We have here China, we have South Koreans, we have India, those who could really support this area. So it really leaves the sector very, very weak. Only that the presenter hinted on, say, Madagascar, and how they had come out with something. Here, incidentally, what Madagascar presented in 2014, we worked on a similar plant, which would take as the main active ingredient in their, preparation. That's Artemisia annua, which gives us artemisinin. This was 2014, and our lead researcher, Dr. Gwang Patrick, well-known, who is now with Mara University Farm Biotrack, came out with a product currently called Atavo. In there is Artemisia annua, which has been, artemisinin is removed. So the remaining ingredient is very good as an immunobooster. And when you, in combination with avocado seed powder, that combination has worked very well regarding prevention of malaria, immunoboosting, and it could easily be targeted for the current pandemic. But what we are lacking, supportive policies. We have no talking platform because of lack of that, and sectors that could really come in to support. Like, I would imagine pharmacists should be the very first ones to really support this, but because there is lack of, maybe they are sort of, their hands are tied behind because of their regulations in their councils. You find that we just left like that, and we really do miss out. I think I have a presentation to make, and when I come to the presentation, I think I will throw more light on other issues. Thank you.
Go ahead, go right ahead to your presentation. Please go right ahead to your presentation. Yes, please.
Okay. So bring one. Okay. Somebody screen. Go. The one. I don't.
Dr. Nambatia, we're listening to you. Go ahead, just go to your presentation.
I would like to share the screen. I've been disabled from sharing the screen. Can you enable me to share the screen, please? Can I speak? Okay. Excuse me.
The technical team is going to work on that. Okay, now you can share your screen. You're able to share your screen.
All right. Okay. So I want to start as the beginning. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Connect it. Connecting. Cancel. Cancel. Is it okay? Okay, I wanted to put in there. Cancel. Okay, let me give you, can I go ahead? Hello? Hello, can I go ahead?
Doctor, please go ahead. We can see your screen.
Okay.
We're ready for your presentation.
All right. I'm taking you through.
Now we don't have much time, but yes, go ahead.
Okay, based on the attitudes that I've talked about, I would love to flash you into certain facts on ground. If we really learned about them, probably things would be different. We have World Health Organization estimating that traditional medicine is primary source of healthcare. 80% of Africans accessing that, and for Uganda, 60%. In that regard, this traditional medicine has been taken, seen as having great potential for contributing to universal healthcare. And of course, for Uganda, our focus here has been support in a way of promoting universal health coverage. Current status in Uganda that leads us to really almost having no support in the area of traditional medicine, the inadequate policies like I've talked about. Recent, we only had one research institute, there was no curriculum in traditional medicine, but at the moment, okay, Directorate of Industrial Training is doing something, and we're seeing a few private herbal industries coming up, but struggling because of lack of funding. In a flash, if we do a SWOT analysis, traditional medicine has been in existence since time immemorial. Human resources available at the moment, I would think there are those students, people who've done sciences who can be oriented to research. Accessibility, acceptability, and affordability is still fine. Collaboration with other countries. We currently have official collaborations with South Korea, India, and China. Uganda is a member of the WHO, which recognizes traditional medicine role in primary health care. But now look at the weaknesses. We have inadequate documentation, limited capacity building of human resource, lack of access to advanced technologies. It takes real advanced technologies like nanotechnology to get out those active molecules, mark them, and get to standardization that is so highly required. There is inadequate funding. For example, we've always done preliminary research work, but it always just ends up just isolate or identifying phytocomponents. Hardly do we go further than that, because taking through one therapy alone up to a conclusion requires just a minimum 100 million Uganda shillings, but our budget really is already so small, we cannot do much. Lack of collaboration between Western trained, we call them medical doctors, and traditional medical doctors. There is lack of that official collaboration, even though this effort was embarked on in Uganda all the way back in 1993. But up to now, there are the only policy that is supporting is the policy that the act and National Drug Authority. National Drug Authority has done a lot to at least do something towards regulating some herbals on the market, but they really need other laws in place to really work smoothly. We lack a herbal pharmacopoeia and information. We need digitalization to really know where our critical plants are. For example, when you talk about COVID, there are lots of plants, especially those that have effect on malaria, like the famous mululus, those that contain equivalent of hydroxychloroquine that the whole world has been searching for. And but because the lack of digitalization, the biodiversity disappears before you even know what you have. So we are really missing out. And as we talk, whatever highway you take, you see rapid disappearance of this biodiversity. But of course, under opportunities, there is high political will, opportunities to collaborate with other institutions and countries, high demand for traditional medicine from the population. The population really demands, but they really want quality. At the end of the day, we should really have those quality products. We of recent had favorable climate, but I'm not too sure of this right now because of the way trees have really been cut and the weather is changing. The challenging health conditions. As we talk again under COVID, COVID has taken the stage and people are suffering with other the challenges silently. So the health burden to me is going up, and that presents an opportunity for us to look into what we have and see. And in some regards, there is that failing on the Western medicines, the antibiotic resistance, and the rest of it. The mindset of the population, including all of us on this panel. I think we really have some form of but the pandemic really made a statement that things can be shut down, and what we may be remaining with are the trees and the plants around us. So what happens? Adverse change in climatic conditions, environmental degradation, enactment of poor policies, or lack of implementation of some of the good ones, lack of collaboration, I've mentioned it, and failure to implement its good policies. Behind the scene, private sector foundation under the World Bank has been trying to fund the herbal sector under category informal. And we're seeing something coming through. For example, here in the picture, what you see are our youth, those form for leavers, unemployed, being skilled under private sector foundation, and at least to get a certificate. That effort has been in place. But then this is a session where they are being examined by Directorate of Industrial Training. But then you wonder after that, what next? You know, here you can see the head of state passing off some of these that have graduated. This was in 2018. I think we passed out about 1,000. But now what next? Without a law, without industrialization, nothing much can go on. So there is that political will, which we would have needed to really ride on. Behind the scene, we have the herbalists, you know, trying without funding, coming up with at least distillates. They are trying to get some, like, you know, packaging their products. And some of these have come forth, presented them for potential evaluation. And currently we've been lined up under therapeutics and Professor Nanturia's group to really see whether we can pick on some of these and validate them to really see whether they could be useful in this pandemic. And as we talk, we've already come out with some formulations that are going to be sent to National Drug Authority for notification, then be validated under pharmacology, and probably get into a clinical trial. These are simple herbal tablets and distillates that we have, and picked from the multitude of what the herbalists have presented. Previous presenter noted that there is really real weakness. Yes, it's there, but incidentally, the local people, those ingrained in this knowledge, they are really, you know, very hardworking. They're working, for example, you can see this is a local distiller out there where they distill these aromatic plants. When you hear of rosemary, you know, those perfumes are medicines. These people distill, and then after distilling, they'll pack, you know, these essential oils which you buy when you travel. They can be made here. So what we need is really to really get the traditional medicine, complementary medicine bill signed into law. The National Drug Authority statute already backs up research in herbal medicine, and then we shall start seeing a change around. We've moved around, we've gone to China to benchmark. We've seen what we need, and here in Uganda, these stainless steel gadgets, as you see them here, these are in China, but they can be made here because that's what we need primarily to add to quality. For me, what is in China here can be in Uganda. So, and we're looking up to this proper packaging. So I want to conclude by saying that we just need a supportive policy, that the one that's just ready for signing, and then we just get running. But within this pandemic, watch the space. We are coming out with 2 products, one that will handle inflammation and one that has a real killer for any virus. Just watch the space. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor. We were put on notice that in 2 weeks' time, somebody was coming up with a therapy, with a cure of some sorts. Then it turned out to be a hand sanitizer. Hopefully this is much different. But But thank you very much, Doctor, and we will have a time for questions.
Okay.
And I know there are very many that are going to arise from your presentation. I think it's now a good time for us to have our poll question. Participants, we're going to have a poll question flash on your screens. Please choose the option that applies best to you. Technical team, if we could have our first poll question, and it's in relation to Dr. Nambatia's presentation. Okay, as we wait for the poll question, I'd just like to let all our panelists and participants know that if you have any question and any comment, please go to the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. You can drop your question there and we'll have the panelists respond to those questions throughout the webinar. That tab will be active. So our first poll question, it's on alternative treatments. Do you think alternative treatments through natural remedies and herbs can become viable economic ventures in Africa, as it has been in China, for example? And our options are yes, with the right investment in research and the culture of patenting. Second option, unlikely. Attitudes among decision makers and the public are firmly skewed towards Western medicine. And our last option, yes, but on a household and micro level, not as a national foreign exchange earner. Those are the three options to the question, do you think alternative treatments through natural remedies and herbs can become viable economic ventures in Africa, as it has been in China? Please go ahead and choose the option that best applies to you, what your view is, and we will be seeing the answers coming in. Or panelists, you're not able to take the poll. You'll only be able to see the final results.
Okay.
Okay. As the poll goes on, I'd like to invite our next discussant, who is Professor Vinand Nanturia, and Doctor has just referred to him. Professor Vinand Nanturia is a Ugandan physician. Okay, just before I continue with introducing Doctor, I'll just let you know the results of the poll because they're flashing on the screen and they will disappear. 82% of us have said yes, with the right investment in research and the culture of patenting, we're able to have these natural remedies and herbs become viable economic ventures. 11% said it's unlikely, and only 8% said yes, but on a household and micro level. So that is that's how we polled for the first poll question. We'll have other poll questions as we go along. Thank you very much. So I'd like to invite our next discussant, Professor Vinand Nanturia. He's a Ugandan physician, pathologist, medical researcher, entrepreneur, and academic administrator, who since 3rd October 2017 serves as the Chancellor of Busitema University, a public university in the eastern region of Uganda. He has served as a research fellow at the International Laboratory for Research on Animal Disease at the University of Nairobi. He has also served as a senior research scientist in international health at Harvard School of Public Health, a professor of health and international relations at the University of Geneva, and senior fellow at the University of Sciences in Philadelphia, senior health advisor at the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria in Geneva, and is the current senior presidential advisor on vaccines and pharmaceuticals to the president of Uganda. As an entrepreneur, he has developed a vaccine called Cuckoo Star, which prevents Newcastle disease in chicken at his company, BrainTech Vaccine Limited. He also manufactures rapid diagnostic tests against several diseases at his other company, Astel Diagnostics Limited. Professor Vinand holds a degree of Doctor of Medicine from the University of Dar es Salaam and a Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Nairobi. Due to his research in the immunology of infectious disease in Switzerland, he was conferred with the title of Fellow of Royal College of Pathologists. Dr. Vinand Nantudia, you are welcome to have your presentation.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, dear listeners. I'm going to be going to the desktop of the computer because I've got my comments written down, if you'll allow me. Now, my contribution is going to be focused on manufacturing. But before I do that, let me make a comment on the suggestion for establishing the National Institute of Health. Way back in 1998, I was invited to undertake a study funded by WHO and aimed at developing a way to strengthen health research in Uganda. I engaged all the stakeholders and proposed the creation of an institution that would play exactly the role described. I had called it National Institute of Health, but the stakeholders agreed to change the title to Uganda National Health Research Organization, or UNRO. The institution was subsequently created by Act of Parliament in 2009. What would be required perhaps is to review, restructure, reorientate, restaff UNRO, as in my view, it has not lived up to the original expectation. That's just a comment. Now, COVID-19 has shown us that we must build a strong industry for pharmaceuticals and biologics that is capable of responding in a timely manner to the many challenges that are sure to come, be they of human, animal, agricultural, or environmental nature. Indeed, COVID-19 has underlined the imperative of the $1 health, one health. We need to advance the concept of One Health because One Health is an approach to designing and implementing programs, policies, legislation, and research in which multiple sectors communicate and work together to achieve better public health outcomes. The areas of work in which a One Health approach is particularly relevant include food safety, the control of zoonosis, i.e. diseases that can spread between animals and humans, such as COVID-19, other flus, rabies, Rift Valley fever, and combating antibiotic resistance. So it's important to endorse the One Health concept and move along that. The key players in pharmaceuticals or in medicine and biologics, the key players are in that industry are the scientists or innovators, the manufacturers, the consumers or users of the innovation, and the government. In the value chain of product development, the manufacturing sector lies at the interface between innovation and the end user of the innovations. For the country to develop a strong industrial base our universities and research institutions should be well-resourced by government to be able to generate those innovations. The innovations are developed to the stage of what we call a product in the box, which is then the level of development of an innovation that shows that indeed it is possible for industry to take it up for pilot production initially, and then so that you can test to generate evidence that the product can actually work. At this juncture, the collaboration between innovators and industry is essential. So it's not that every innovator should come out with an innovation and run to go and produce and set up an industry for it. It is not easy. In fact, the innovator stops innovating because there are lots of roadblocks on the way. Therefore, it's important for the innovator to collaborate with the industry. Now, industry proceeds to manufacture a large batch of the product after showing that it may work. And this is for purposes of generation of evidence in the field for acceptability by the end user and for regulatory approvals. And that's a process. The final stage is that the manufacturer of the approved product now undertakes the development of appropriate packaging, innovation of production processes, development of standard operating procedures to ensure that quality of the product remains the same in all the production cycles, and that marketing and distribution of the product is undertaken, post-market surveillance is undertaken. All this is the responsibility of the manufacturer. And it's not simple, neither is it cheap. So moving forward in developing our local capacity for industrial base and the following overarching challenges. One, policies and processes that permit importation of cheap competing products, coupled with the mindset that views local products as inferior. All this needs to be handled. All nations have policies that protect the interests of their industries. So let's not listen to anybody who comes to tell us that it's not important for our country and our government to pay attention to local industry. It will not work. Implementation, therefore, of BUBU, Buy Uganda, Build Uganda, requires to be adequately resourced and promoted. Two, promoting access to regional markets. It is in the interest of industry to access a wider market. Every manufacturer wants to do that. Our colonial boundaries are a hindrance that must be addressed by government to promote the growth of regional markets. Three, the high cost of capital, namely the prohibitive high commercial bank interest rates when compared to the rates in the developed world, are not conducive to development of our local industry. This needs to be attended to by government. Next is the cost of human capital. Human capital cost is also high. Our education institutions are spilling out very raw materials, some of them. The students are trained to memorize and reverberate rather than trained to think and solve problems. You recruit them, you have to train and retrain. The moment they are trained, they leave. But we need a continuous flow of individuals from our training institutions that are capable of taking on challenges. Let us develop, equip, and resource our National Drug Authority into one strong food and drug authority under the concept of One Health, to be able to supervise our local industries and avoid being diverted to creating a separate NDA for livestock products, which has been mooted in cabinet. It's a bad idea. Finally, we need harmonization of regulatory approvals for products by the national regulatory authorities so that products registered in one country can be exported to the other countries in the region, in the East African region, without requiring the manufacturer to repeat registration processes in each and every country for each and every product. This is destructive. I would in fact be delighted to have an East African CE marking or a Pan-African CE marking rather than measuring up only to the European and American standards, because we can do so. Let me inform you that when we look at our National Drug Authority, it's a very competent organ. It's got very many competent individuals in there. Some have been snatched. The current head of the WHO pre-qualification is a Ugandan picked up from NDA. And many people from NDA, many staff are regularly recruited to go and inspect factories in Asia, in Europe, but we don't seem to see that we have a valuable asset called NDA. And all we need to do is to strengthen it, because a strong NDA is what will give us the products that are of quality that can compete on the international market. Over, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Professor, for those insights. We're going to be very interested in hearing about the institute that was, that law that we started to put together in 1998, and where it's at and how it relates to the proposals from the Castle think tank on having a new institute. Just aligning that, because at the end of the day, what we want is, an institute that can move this sector forward, that can encourage people to do research. But when we come to the Q&A, we will hear from you a bit more on that aspect. And Dr. Bachenga, please also get ready to respond in relation to how these two can be harmonized. Again, thank you very much, Professor Nanturia. We will be coming back to you. To all the panelists, please pay attention to the Q&A section, because there are many questions there. For example, Dr. Nambatia, there are a number of questions that have come in for you to respond to. So if you could please go to that tab and respond to those questions. We'll have a chance of referring to some of them when we come to the Q&A. But since we might be pressed for time, it's best that you keep visiting that section. And any other panelists, if you're able to respond to a question there, please go ahead and respond to those questions. I will pick up from where Professor Nanturia left off. He said, we have a valuable asset in the National Drugs Authority. And our next discussant is Dr. David Nahamia. He is the current secretary to the authority of the National Drug Authority. He joined NDA as an inspector of drugs and later posted as a regional inspector of drugs Eastern Region. In 2006, he served as the regional inspector of drugs Central Region and later transferred to the head office as senior inspector of drugs in charge of licensing, market surveillance and enforcement. In 2017, he became the acting head Drug Inspectorate Services and later appointed director Inspectorate and Enforcement. Dr. Nahamia was appointed acting secretary to the authority in February of 2019, a position he has held until being substantively confirmed as the secretary to the authority on the 1st of August 2019. Dr. Nahamia, who has a span of over 18 years experience in drug regulation and management, is a pharmacist by profession and holds a master's degree in the fields of pharmaceutical sciences from the University of Havana, health economics from the University of Cape Town, and Business Administration from ISAMI. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. David Nahamia.
Am I on now?
Yes,
thank
you
very
are.
much. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and I'm happy to be part of this webinar. And are you getting me now?
Yes, we are. We can hear you, Doctor. Please go right ahead.
Yes. And before forgetting, I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Nanturia for those comments, because he has been working with us, and he really is among the first maker innovation in Uganda here, that Cookster, the vaccine for veterinary. It's a big compliment. He worked with us, with our technical team, and really the issue of innovation can go ahead if you have skilled manpower. And he can patent it. I saw in Doctor's presentation the issues of patenting. If you do an innovation, it can be patented. But anyway, going back to the issues of discussion, the issue has been based on drugs. But I would like to remind all of us that there are another issue which we are forgetting: medical devices. Medical devices, and I think Professor Nantria is also has gone into that area of diagnostics. If you see the issue of COVID now, there was a rush for masks, rapid diagnostics, and all those are pharmaceuticals. So when you are talking about this area, let us broaden it. If you are to look at the volume of imports, also this is the medical devices, take a bigger percentage. Look at, for example, gloves, condoms, sutures, all those move together with the drugs. And you are aware that Africa, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, the burden of, Africa has the highest burden of disease. And you are aware that for you to move ahead to resolve the issue of disease, commodities, these pharmaceutical supplies, specifically drugs, they play a very big role. Here you can see we're talking of drugs and biologicals. But for us, they are the same. As for our definition in our act, of course, the biologicals, you are referring to things like insulin and some other drugs from that origin. But to move forward, what have we learned from this COVID? It has shown us that we need to make sure that our local industry is somehow self-sufficient. We should be able to, at least if we are producing like 70%, 75% of our needs strategically, would say we are, so in terms of security, would be okay. But as I talk now, more than approximately 80% is imported, and we are able maybe to cater for 20%. This is not very strategic. As you saw in this, when this pandemic came, some countries even started rationing. Countries like India stopped the export of some drugs. Some countries stopped the export of these masks. We have been struggling to get these rapid diagnostics. So these are lessons that we have learned from this pandemic. But with this pandemic, there is a silver lining. So what have we learned? What have we learned that we can move forward with? This is the time now for us to put in place strategies to make sure that our local industries grow. And you get surprised in this short time of the pandemic. We have so far seen like we have inspected 48 factories making sanitizers. Although they are not up that standard that we want, but they have been able to manufacture sanitizers and they're able to export. We have seen factories coming up to make masks in a very short time. And I think we have seen like, we have inspected like more than 4 and they're already supplying the market. Then what about the pharmaceutical industry? Maybe I would advise my friend, the doctor who presented, some data are not very accurate. We shall share with you unaccurate data in terms of the number of industries that we have local. We have so far around 18 local manufacturers and maybe 14 for the drugs. And I would mention that maybe one of them has drugs which are pre-qualified by the WHO. The WHO pre-qualifies the product, not the whole factory. And when you are pre-qualified by the WHO, it means even these international agencies can buy from you. For example, CIPRA, Quality Chemicals, has some drugs which are WHO pre-qualified. And therefore, some of these donors can buy from there. So what does that mean? If the local industry wants its products to be WHO pre-qualified, you have to invest in infrastructure. The standards for WHO pre-qualification are a bit high, but they can be attained. And we are there to give technical assistance. And one of our mandates as a National Drug Authority is to support the local industry. And we are there and we have done it. That's why you can see some of these industries are coming up. What do we do in order to support the local industry? We give them technical support. We go there, inspect, tell them what to do, where the improvements are necessary. We also give some incentives like when they are importing the raw materials, we don't charge them the verification fees. When they want to introduce the product on the market, it takes an abridged version. We take like maximum 3 months, you can put the product on the market. But for international players, manufacturers can take at least maybe 2 years. So there are so many incentives that we have given. And we have also now introduced BUBU, what Professor Nancy has been referring to. BUBU is whereby we have selected 37 products, which we think the local industry has the capacity, and we have raised the fee to 12% to protect that local industry, protect those products so that they can compete with the imported ones, which would be cheaper. There is also another incentive by government, whereby when you are tendering, you apply for a tender, say to national medical stores, if your product is 15% more than the imported one, you are given preference. So those are some of the incentives that we have been trying to, we are giving the local industry. But still, this has not been enough. It's not enough. The 12% alone is not enough. But still, even before I go to the other incentives, there are still more bottlenecks. And Professor Nantwi has alluded some of them. One of them is the size of our market. We have a population of around 40. East Africa is maybe 170. Look at Nigeria. Nigeria has a market of population of around maybe 200. So your market here, we are not going to attract these investors, because investing in pharmaceutical it's heavy investment. For you to put up a plant to be compliant with the WHO conditions, you may not invest less than maybe $20 million if it is for these normal products. But if you are going for biologics and sterile products, maybe you need at least maybe $30 million. So what should be done? What should be done for that? Or what can we do? I think you have heard of harmonization, East African harmonization. We are trying to create conditions so that the investors, the local and those who are coming in, for them to access the East African markets of maybe more than 140 million people, so that the market becomes bigger. We would want, we are carrying out joint inspections, joint registrations with the objective of achieving mutual recognition, so that if you register a product here, it can move within the East African region freely. For example, if the Cookster vaccine by Dr. Nanturia, if it can move within the East African region, that's a big market. So that is one of the challenges. Of course, another big challenge is that skilled manpower. Of course, we are producing graduates, but the skilling, we want hands-on. That's where I think we should also put emphasis. What about the linkages with these universities? Universities and industry. New products are discovered or are improved upon by the linkages between the universities and the industry. PhDs and masters are made when new products are produced by these students in linkage with the what? These factories. How much are we putting in R&D, research and development? What percentage, for example, if you look at our industries, what is the percentage of their income? What percentage of their income are they putting into R&D? Those countries, those factories, or what we are hearing, the big multinationals, if you look at them, they're investing a big percentage of their income in R&D. So R&D, research and development. Dr. Nambate was talking about these herbal medicines. We know some of them have APIs, they can treat some ailments which we know, but who has invested more in these herbal drugs to put them on an industrial scale, to transform them into, formulate them into capsules, formulate them into syrups, into tablets on a large scale and put them on large scale production. So another issue which I think we need to address, but this is at the macro level, it is to do with cost of production. Cost of production. Of course, Dr. Nanturia talked about the cost of capital. Cost of capital. In some countries, I know you can borrow at 4%, but here, you know the interest rates. But good enough, I know with this book, the government has put a lot of money in ADB, and I think the interest rates are going to be lower. That is the cost of capital. How do you access it? Of course, there are other issues at the high level, at the macro level, which the government is trying to address. One of the issues is infrastructure. Infrastructure, access to power, cheap power, water, electricity, and roads. We have been discussing about setting up an industrial area or industrial park, like the one in Mount Namangwe, but specifically for pharmaceuticals. So that, you know, pharmaceuticals, that is a clean industrial park, whereby the government or the investment authority can easily take their water, can easily take their electricity at a subsidized rate. And when you set up such an industrial park, it means other ancillary industries will come up. Packaging materials will come there. So if you look at the inputs, all these inputs in these local industries, I can say you'll find that maybe 90% we're importing. We're importing 90% of the APIs. You are importing almost 100% of the excipients, which are important ingredients. You cannot produce the formulation without, you cannot make a formulation without these excipients. You have had people trying to invest in manufacturing starch, pharmaceutical grade. We have the raw materials here. You have heard of sugar of pharmaceutical grade. People are trying to invest in that area. So there is that area where you can also, infrastructure issues which we need to address. And then I think the skilled labor, I've talked about it. We need financing, we have talked about it. We need to, export promotion. We need these products of ours here to be exported in neighboring countries. Of course, we have been, what's happening is that people import from this India, China, then they export. But if we are exporting what is manufactured from here, we gain more. So that's an area we also need to work on. We also need to work on the perceptions of our people. I know we have good quality drugs here, but our local population, even the allies, think that products from here are not of good quality. Of course, the legal framework, we need to work on it to favor the local production. So, of course, I've talked of harmonization, the EEC harmonization, so that our products can move within the East African region. And of course, we increase on the market size. So, generally, in a nutshell, National Drug Authority, we are ready to work with the innovators. But of course, the legal framework, where the bills has been around to increase our scope, to regulate these medical devices, cosmetics, and of course, we are talking of food safety. And we move on. So anyway, thank you very much. Those are the points which I wanted to highlight. And of course, if you talk of biologics, biologicals are even more complex, even more expensive.
Okay,
so I think
doctor.
Add from there. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Could you just comment very quickly on the suggestion under opportunities and recommendations? Dr. Bachenga talked about setting up a National Institute of Health. What's your view on that?
Of course, that one, Dr. Nantri had already commented on it. There is one institute which has been already, which was put up. What is necessary is to orient that and maybe restructure it to achieve the same objectives. And I saw in the write-up that institute can deal with the quality of drugs. No, that is not correct. The mandate of quality of drugs is the National Drug Authority, and it is that's the core mandate of drug regulatory agencies. Ensure, for example, our mandate is ensure availability at all times of quality drugs which are safe, efficacious, and cost-effective to the entire population of Uganda. So I think it cannot play that role. Maybe it can contribute.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yes, just one more thing. Does NDA see an immediate benefit of strengthening the institute that's there currently?
Yes, collaboration. This regulation, we cannot do it alone. So it's if they strengthen it and direct it to, because the understanding has been there, but you don't hear it being active. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nahamia, and we will be coming back to you. But in the meantime, participants are writing their questions and their comments in the Q&A section. So all panelists, please go to that section and respond to the questions. Use the type answer, and then you can type your answer to whichever question applies to you. I'd like now to invite our next discussant, Dr. Stephen Birungi. He is the current managing director of Alphasan Uganda, which is a part of Alphasan International, which is a Dutch company that is a leading manufacturer of veterinary medicines specifically. They are specialists in the production of injectable solutions and suspensions. This factory was commissioned by His Excellency, the President of Uganda, on the 1st of November 2018. Dr. Birungi is also CEO of Farm Support Limited, a pharmaceutical distribution company founded in 2004. He's also Executive Director of Camel Development Initiative, an NGO founded at Wageningen University in the Netherlands to foster economic and food security in Africa. And it links farmers to the market in addition to providing skills. He's also the current Pan-African chairman of Africa Business Academy, a platform of over 500 SMEs in 6 African countries, namely Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Malawi, and Ethiopia. He's also a founding member and chairman emeritus of the Netherlands Uganda Trade and Investment Platform, an organization that fosters SME collaboration between Uganda and Netherlands and promotes investment in Uganda from the Netherlands. He has 22 years of business experience in the pharmaceutical sector. He is a veterinary doctor and holds a master's degree in business administration and a bachelor's degree in veterinary medicine from both of these are from Makerere University. Dr. Birungi, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm trying to put the video. It is an honor to be here because this is a once in a lifetime challenge of having. Of course, some of us have heard about smallpox. We have heard about things like rinderpest. I've heard about both human and veterinary pandemics, but we've not experienced them in person. I think, personally vaccinated against smallpox, but most people are not because they are younger than the last time smallpox was vaccinated. So this pandemic of COVID is a once in a lifetime challenge to the country, to the population. Of course, we are grateful to the task force for coming up with measures. So in my 10 minutes, I'm just going to highlight the challenge as it is, as we know it, and the opportunity it portends. Of course, my colleagues, the discussants, have already done justice to this discussion, to the issue of what stares us in the face in regard to this COVID-19. I just have the issue to say that when you look at the reality of COVID, it is an existential threat to our people, to ourselves, to our families, to our economics. So it is something which has found us naked, if I may use that word. We have been stripped bare because you know how, like what the NDA secretary has said, and of course also Professor Nantulia have said it clearly. You saw how even countries were scrambling to ration certain supplies, you know, to other countries. People started looking in rather than outward. And that can be even worse. Of course, Mr. Iguma said it earlier, that we see the trucks, even Ugandans were very, very unhappy because trucks were being allowed to come in. So assuming the virus was such a virus that even trucks, the tires of trucks could cause a problem or could pose a risk, and we closed everything, would we survive? So it is against this background that for those of us who are in the world of pharmaceuticals, we know that the world of pharmaceuticals is not about making money alone, but saving lives. We know that the pharmaceutical industry in the world today is worth 1.2 trillion. This year it could be worth $1.5 trillion. $1.5 trillion. And of course, you mentioned earlier about Roche, Pfizer. Each of these companies has a budget which is bigger than the GDP of Uganda. So this is an opportunity, this COVID-19 is an opportunity for us to assess in the world order, in the world economy, where do we stand? Are we viable as a country? And I want to make a case here as an industrialist that we have a lot of knowledge, research and development, and most of this, when people research and come up with this research goes either to the US or to Europe. What Professor Nantulia said, to be turned into the finished product in a box to be marketed. Because the case has been made over and over, I don't need to belabor it. Research and development alone in the world economy, when you look at one drug, one viable drug in those countries and those multinationals, just research and development to have one drug, it used to cost about $1 billion, one drug. But now, because of the complexity of research, clinical trials, I'm told to have one drug is now coming to about $2.5 billion. So that brings us quickly forward that it's an opportunity for us as a country to have a pie in the pharmaceutical industry, one as an economic driver, because if you look at the $1.5 trillion, even if we had just 10% as sub-Saharan Africa, we are looking at serious money. I've done some calculations here and I've shown that just by responding to this COVID, we could create 2 million good paying jobs in the value chain of pharmaceuticals, that is medicines and biologics. And that is not just in R&D, but also in manufacturing, in marketing, that's distribution, because you know you have agents. National Drug Authority, Dr. David Nahanya is here. You don't want people who are not qualified to be handling drugs. So even just in the marketing, we could have good paying jobs. I've calculated about 300,000 jobs, which could be new jobs created by strengthening the pharmaceutical industry. But one of the most important things, and I allow me to re-echo what Professor Nantulia said, one of the things which as Uganda could be a very important thing, you know, we are an agricultural country. Agriculture and agribusiness in the world is worth $5 trillion as money, which is input and output. This is money which is handled every year. And we know that World Bank has told us that sub-Saharan Africa alone, by 2030, we shall have agribusiness and agriculture worth $1 trillion in sub-Saharan Africa alone. Now, why am I saying this? As somebody who is in the veterinary sector, but also combining with the human pharmaceutical sector, we now understand that the pharmaceutical sector can be a very big driver for modern production of protein. You know, as people get better, many of you, somebody used the word elite. As the elite earn better, they want to eat more protein, they want to eat more balanced diet, more vegetables, more meat, more eggs. And of course, you know that Uganda has been doing well. We are now producing 2.5 billion liters of milk, but we could easily produce more, because our population, if we take milk as the WHO recommends, we could easily be having a production of 9 billion liters of milk. And that alone can create an extra 400,000 good paying jobs. I'm not talking just about people carrying weight, people carrying grass, good paying jobs in the retail, wholesale. So when I talked about the 2 million jobs in the pharmaceutical sector, I include in agribusiness, and one of the areas is, as Dr. Nahanya said, the veterinary sector is very important in terms of having wholesome food.
All right.
You know, I conclude by saying, if you look at, for example, you've heard of resistance, pesticides against ticks. We are having, sometimes people say there are residues in the meat. You had a crisis last year where people were saying there are residues in the meat. People are spiking meat with certain chemicals. So even just issues of supervision to make sure that people eat well, because we know with the COVID-19, the WHO is saying that with COVID-19 and maybe future pandemics, we have to take care of what people eat so that their immunity is good. We are hearing that there is deficiency, for example, vitamin D. We could have supplements in milk or milk powder that is spiked with vitamin D so that the vulnerabilities, for example, to COVID-19 is reduced because we are having a complete diet to our people. I'd like to conclude by saying, by repeating in a way, what is hindering and what is the opportunity in the pharmaceutical sector. The pharmaceutical sector, there are factories which are coming up, but there is a big problem that factories are not moving quickly enough. And you, as the moderator, mentioned the urgency, and also the person who presented the theme piece said we are not treating these things with urgency. A factory like Alphasan, like the factory which I had, we commissioned in 2018, but we are nowhere near as a complete package, and the NDA person is here. We will tell you that to get to the level where we are given a GMP certificate, already you've invested $10 million, but you're not even at the level of to have a complete and proper factory. So where are you going to get that money? Already shareholders maybe are stretched, maybe you've already borrowed from UDB, and UDB will not maybe give you a loan of $15 million. So if you have already started producing, you have to service loans. So where is the good capital, which is long enough, long-term finance of say 20 years? So I would like to propose that the opportunities are there if the pharmaceutical industry rises to the occasion. And I am sure that even just this COVID intervention, we can create 2 million jobs, and I'm ready to engage to show you where these jobs are in the sectors that we are talking about.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Birungi. You ended on a question around where the finances can come from. When we come to you during the Q&A, we'd like to hear your suggestions on where some avenues of getting the finances that can be put in the sector, and that will be used to build on the other suggestions from other panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to invite our special guest to give us her presentation. But before we have the special guest, I'd like us to take our next poll. And in just a few seconds, it's going to appear on your screen. A reminder that only the participants can take the poll. The host and the panelists cannot. And our poll question is, what is the biggest obstacle to improving the availability of quality drugs in Uganda's public healthcare system? What is the biggest obstacle to improving the availability of quality drugs in Uganda's public healthcare system? The first option, inadequate skilling of pharmacists, inadequate funding for medicines, insufficient policy oversight and regulation, and finally, importation of cheap drugs. If you could go ahead and take the poll. Of the 4 options, choose the one that you think is the biggest obstacle to improving the availability of quality drugs in Uganda's public healthcare system. Okay, in a very short while, I will be reading the results from the poll. As participants respond to the poll question, I just would like to remind us that we're using We are on Facebook and Twitter, and we're using the hashtags Castle Webinar and Thrive Medicine. Immediately after this webinar, you will be able to see to view this video if you go to any of Castle's social media pages. That's on Facebook and on Twitter. You will be able to watch this webinar again. All right, let's have the results for the poll. Okay, so 6%. I'll start with the highest, and we have a tie where 38% said the biggest obstacle is inadequate funding for medicines and insufficient policy oversight and regulation. Only 6% said inadequate skilling of pharmacists, and only 18% said importation of cheap drugs. Thank you very much for taking that poll. We'll have another poll question, but now let us invite Dr. Neville Okuna, who is the current Commissioner, Pharmaceuticals and Natural Medicines at the Ministry of Health. She is our special guest today. She has over 31 years of working experience. Her previous assignments include 18 years being assigned as Registrar of Pharmacists and Secretary to the Pharmacy Board. For 5 years, she has also served as the Principal Pharmacist for Mulago National Referral Hospital. She has also served at the former Central Medical Stores, which is now the National Medical Stores, NMS, for 5 years, and Ministry of Health Headquarters for 2 years as an intern pharmacist for, this was for 1 year. She's a mother of 4. Neville is a happily married woman, a member of the Pharmaceutical Society of Uganda, and a board member of the National Drug Authority. She holds an MBA from ISAMI, a Master of Science in Pharmaceuticals from Havana University in Cuba, and a Master of Science in Medicines, Regulation and Control from the University of Bradford in the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to invite now to speak our special guest, Dr. Neville Okuna. Over to you, Doctor.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Doctor.
Our dear listeners, I want to thank you for being there for us. And it is an honor for me to be a guest speaker in this webinar. First of all, I want to thank Castro for giving us this opportunity and for choosing a very exciting topic and very important too. I want to thank all the panelists for all the contributions that they have made and for highlighting issues that are really pertinent. And also,
yes,
I
Doctor.
thank
Could you please put your video on as you continue? Sorry for the interruption. Your video is not on, and would like to see you.
Okay, I want to thank the Castro team for giving us this opportunity to discuss issues that are pertinent to the pharmaceutical sector. And I also thank the presenter of the Think Piece for teasing out very, very pertinent issues to do with the topic at hand. And actually, I want to start with what the chair of Castro said, that we should look at the reason why things can happen. So the theme for today is an opportunity to thrive in the COVID-19 saga. Is it an opportunity or a challenge? For me, I take it positively, in that all this while we have been having policies. We have the National Drug Policy, we have the National Pharmaceutical Sector Strategic Plan, we have the National Drug Authority Act that stipulates how we should run the pharmaceutical sector business. But we have been slow, as one of the presenters pointed out, that we didn't have any sense of urgency. But now the COVID-19 has brought it clearly that we don't need to do business as usual. We have to do business unusual. With regards to the regulatory framework, I think many of the panelists have referred to the inadequacy of the regulatory framework, and some of which have delayed to be put in place. For example, the National Drug Authority is due to be revised, has already been revised, but to get out the revised act that would propel us into serious action has been difficult. And then also we have the policy on traditional medicine that Dr. Nambadia talked about, but that one should not prevent us from moving forward. I suggest that we start with what is available, and as the policies come on board, we shall modify. Let's not sit and wait for the policies to come first. Let's start with the low-hanging fruits. Now, with regards to COVID-19, it has posed a challenge to the whole world, but Uganda especially has been touched. Now, if the truck drivers were not bringing commodities in the country, it's not only pharmaceuticals, even other real life commodities, we would be in big trouble. But this one should now stimulate thinking. We should look inwardly. Even the local pharmaceutical manufacturers should look inwardly. How have we been doing business? Why have we not moved beyond where we are? I know that the challenges have been highlighted, and there have been cross-cutting issues that have been talked about by the panelists. But then I see that each and every one of us and the key players have got a role to play, better than we have been doing before. Government has also got a role to play to ensure that the challenges that have been talked about of inadequacy of funding, high cost of capital, inadequate regulations, all those should be in place for us to run faster than we are running now. And then we know that the African Development Bank has got a facility to facilitate the development arena, but I think it will be very, very pertinent to have a loan facility which is dedicated strictly for the pharmaceutical manufacturing. Now we have seen the importance. We also think that government should give it the importance we are seeing, that a loan facility is put in place to enable the local manufacturers do what we expect them to do better. Then also another issue which has come out clearly is the issue of 90% importation. Why do we import all our medicines? There are several reasons. We have talked about APIs, that is active pharmaceutical ingredients. We have not been able to manufacture them here. And of course, if we are even to manufacture them here, it may not even be cost effective, given the fact that our market is very small, and not only the market, but also the purchasing power. So as we talk about local manufacturing, we should think about the quality of the products themselves, then the market, who do we intend to serve beyond Uganda? And then also we need to think about the purchasing power. If we are targeting the 40 million Ugandans, how many of them can afford Panadol? If we are thinking of 170 million people in the EAC, how many of them have got the purchasing power? So we need to bring all those into context. And then also, of course, the challenge of capital freight is there. So we need to act smart and ensure that the little that we are spending out for importation is spent within Uganda, so that the balance of payment is improved, and also we are able to plow back into the industry in terms of incentives or in terms of bigger loans. I think the other challenge that we need to tackle is the issue of the organization of the subsector. Yes, we have about 18 local pharmaceutical manufacturers, of varying degree of skill and ability. But how do we enhance the absorption of the product that is going to be manufactured? You find that we have the local manufacturer, the same one is also the distributor, the same one is the wholesaler, the same factory is also having a retail outlet. I think this one beats the whole objective of having a segmentation of duties. Because if we have the local manufacturers, and then we have the distributors, large-scale distributors, not the ones you see in town, who later on sell to the retailers. We eliminate the middlemen, and therefore the cost of medication in the market will be comparatively cheaper. Then there's an issue of concern that the donor commodities is taking away the market share that would have been for the local manufacturers. Yes, to a small extent, but I also think that the donor commodities come into the country when there is a lack. Now, if we were manufacturing enough, then there wouldn't have been any need for the donor commodities to come in. But at the moment, we cannot do away with it completely. For example, when we started the COVID-19 response, we did not have the commodities in place. And then we had to use the first donor commodities that was sent in by Jack Ma Alibaba. And then another one which was meant for Ebola. So the donor facilities come at the time when it is needed most, and when the countries are not prepared, because nobody anticipated that COVID-19 was going to come at such a time. So the donor community came in, and actually, not only for medical supplies, they have also given us non-medical supplies, which ordinarily we wouldn't have afforded to have them at the time we got them. So the best way forward is to ensure that we look inward, we do a lot of advocacy, get support from government in terms of funding, because you can see the poll which has just been put on the screen. It is inadequate funding. So let's put our act together, put our voices together, and ensure and bring to the attention of government that we need this financial support, and after which we shall create value for money. Because sometimes we advocate for financial support, we are given loans, and then we take off without paying back the loans. So we need to show cause that we are trustworthy with the facilities that we are advocating for. Then the issue of pharmaceutical human resource, yes, we need to do business unusual. We have got the School of Pharmacists churning out pharmacies, but we still have to do a little bit more in orientating them that local pharmaceutical manufacturing is the way to go. Not this issue of covering pharmacies that we are doing now. It has to start right from school, right from the university, so that when they come out, they have the right attitude towards local pharmaceutical manufacturing. Then also, the issue of research came out very clearly. The pharmaceutical industry cannot exist without research and development. And therefore, for us to get value for money, we need to invest in research and development, which inform the local pharmaceutical manufacturer what to produce, which technology to use. So if we are not investing in research and development, then we shall not get where we want to be. Then another issue that we need to consider seriously is the opportunity that comes with the Ugandan oil, because the pharmaceutical sector uses some of the output from the from the oil industry. Now, when we get there, when we are refining the oil, some of the outputs will also help to contribute to lower the prices of some of the raw materials. Moderator, I want to pose a question that the issue of importing APIs is very, very important, and we need to discuss it further and come up with a solution. Because we cannot talk of local manufacturing if we cannot afford the APIs, or if we cannot make the APIs locally available. So one of the questions that you should pose is from this discussion is, how do we move forward with making APIs locally available? We have NDA here, we have Nambata with traditional medicines here, and we need to come up with a kind of a proposal that we are going to fast track with the timelines as far as the APIs are concerned. If we can get the APIs, then we move forward to start with the low-hanging fruits. So colleagues, I have heard from the panelists about the One Health concept. That one is very, very important, and I want to thank Doctor for bringing it up, because this is the way to go. One of the challenges that has brought us where we are is the issue of working in isolation. You find the pharmacists are working alone, the clinicians are working alone, the veterinarians are working alone, but it is one value chain. We need to learn to trust each other. We need to learn to work for the population of Uganda, not only for God and my stomach, because the disagreements come. We put our stomach before the population of Uganda. So the issue of One Health is very, very important. And colleagues, as the doctor mentioned, we need to support National Drug Authority to be strengthened, its job to be expanded as the new bill stipulates. There is no need for another body that will be competing for resources that National Drug Authority should be using. We can work out a system that for coexistence with the veterinary colleagues or whichever institution it is, and not confuse the establishment of an equivalent pharmaceutical unit in the Ministry of Agriculture. Don't confuse it with the establishment of another drug regulatory body, because drug components are the same for human and animal, but they vary in the dosage for that matter. So there's no need to have another regulatory body like NDA, separate for cows and another one for humans. One Health approach should continue. And then the issue of about policies on traditional and complementary medicines. Yes, the Ministry of Health recognizes the important role of the traditional and complementary medicines. That's why we have a whole section in the drug policy and the pharmaceutical sector strategic plan. And for your information, the Department of Pharmacy has now been upgraded to take on that role of pharmaceuticals and natural medicines. So we are going to work very hard to ensure that those components are taken care of.
Doctor, are you able to see me on your screen?
No. Yes.
You can't see me. Okay, excellent, excellent. Yes, yes, it's okay. Yeah, you can conclude, but just ensure that you can see me as you continue with your presentation.
Okay, you are not seeing me. Okay, in
No,
conclusion.
I wasn't seeing you clearly. Yes.
Okay. In conclusion, COVID-19 has brought to light the need for us to move faster. We have to move faster with the research that we are doing. We have to move faster with the planning, because as we talk, even planning for procurement can be a challenge. So you need to put the procurement orders well in time, and then we need to take advantage of strategic partnerships whereby we can get commodities as and when we want. Like the case in point, the UN has come up with a kind of a pool procurement platform whereby we can put orders and then we can receive our share of the COVID-19 commodities. The truth is, we have to look inward and come up with our products. We cannot rely 100% with pharmaceutical imports. Sooner or later, it may not be possible. But we have the brains. All we need to advocate for from government is to facilitate us with the right equipment, because in some instances, people put up nice factories, then they import old equipment. By the time they're reaching Uganda, they cannot work. So government should be able to facilitate the local manufacturers with all the tools and the systems they need to manufacture the medicines and capture the market. The sky is the limit, but we need to work in an harmonized and integrated manner. We should stop working in silos. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okuna, our special guest for this webinar. Yes, Doctor. Just before we move away from you, and thank you for putting a question to all the panelists. Hopefully, they, in a few minutes, each of them will be responding. On the issue of, donors, from the think piece, I believe the idea was that, when the donors give money, the preference is for drugs that come, for example, from their countries. And therefore, the local manufacturers do not benefit from that. Can something be done so that even with these donor, with donor support, which we need, local manufacturers can still benefit, so that the drugs that are being bought by the donor money does not only go to, drugs from the donor countries, but also that the local ones benefit?
Thank you, Gabriel. I think something can be done. It depends on how the concept was written, because as I talk now, there are local manufacturers who are supplying Ministry of Health with face masks. They're supplying Ministry of Health with the aprons, gowns, goggles, but they're local manufacturers from within. Now, as we talk now, the World Bank has given Ministry of Health some support, but the condition is buy Uganda, build Uganda. So we have started, and I think as we go along, we shall keep on improving on it.
All right. There was an acknowledgement on the cost. There was an acknowledgement on the cost of the medicines made in Uganda being a bit higher, and therefore not making them quite competitive. But government is a big buyer of medicines. Is there a policy that government should prioritize buying where there is a local option, even where there may be a cheaper foreign option?
I think that policy is there, because as I talk now, some of the local pharmaceutical manufacturers are benefiting from national medical stores tenders. They're supplying, unless they are not trustworthy to tell you that I'm enjoying that, the 15%. They're already enjoying that benefit. So we have started, yeah. But sometimes also, if it is very high, the PPDA also comes in, yeah. The Public Procurement and Disposal Act, we are also bound by the provision of the PPD. Although sometimes it says it is not for, you don't only buy from the cheapest.
I think we lost Dr.
But
Dr.
in
Okuna.
most cases, oh, there's a phone ringing, sorry. So I was saying that we have started, like in the case of Global Fund, sometimes you cannot dictate, but I hope in the new grant writing it will be catered for, because
All
the
right.
old one, Bubu had not come in place, but now there is Bubu. But also,
right.
to add that sometimes the local manufacturers are a problem to themselves, because the quality of the product they churn out in the market, even
All right, Dr. Kuna. Okay, Dr. Kuna, for now we have to leave it there because your network, we can
using NDA, but sometimes local manufacturers up to, yes, please, the phone was ringing, so it is to support local manufacturers to.
Okay, Doctor, we are going to come back to you. Your network is not clear, so we can barely hear the good submissions you're making. So let's put that question that you had asked to the panelists, and when we come back to you, I'm sure your network will be much better. Before we bring the panelists in, two things I'd like to say. Number one is that let's take our poll right now. Let's take our poll. Let's take the next poll. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Monica Musenero. She is a Presidential Advisor on Pandemics. She is joining us for this webinar. We also have Dr. Paul Kasenene, and if we will go to Dr. Kasenene very soon. But our poll question right now is, which of the following interventions would you do most urgently in order to catalyze the development of medicines in Uganda? Which of the following interventions would you do most urgently in order to catalyze the development of medicines in Uganda? Option 1, impose strict legal and procedural restrictions on the importation of drugs in Uganda, introduce a national medical insurance scheme, implement a 50% increment in salaries for medical professionals, and increased funding and investment into pharmaceutical research. Those are the four options. Which of the following four options would you do most urgently in order to catalyze the development of medicines in Uganda? Please pick one of the options there, and in a short while, we will let you know how we have polled. All right. As Dr. Okuna was submitting, she did put the question on APIs to the panelists, and I'd like to start with Dr. Bachenga first on from the discussions that we've had. You know, what are certain things you need to clarify from the presentation you made, and then respond to this question on how we deal with the issue of APIs. But first, we'll have the results of the poll, which results should be coming in now. Right, so 79% of us have said increased funding and investment into the pharmaceutical research. 11% said imposing strict legal and procedural restrictions on the importation of drugs in Uganda. Thank you very much for responding to that poll question. And now I'd like to go to Dr. Bachenga. If you could respond to the questions I just put to you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. I think I'll first comment on the issue of the creation of a National Institute of Health. Again, it's very enlightening to have learned that there is a Uganda National Health Research Organization, which again, as pointed out by Professor Vinand, it is not in any way aligned to what was envisioned or what is pointed out in our submission for the creation of a National Institute of Health. We all know that we have a Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Education. We even have a Ministry for Science and Technology and Innovation. We also have a Uganda National Council for Science and Technology, but it has to be pointed out that all these entities are not in any way focused on active research and development that brings products to the market. So it is possible for us to reorient the Uganda National Health Research Organization, but this is something that would have to be done with urgency, because if even National Drug Authority, as highlighted by the Secretary, does not see how active this institution is, then it means that its contribution in this space is at the very least minimal. On the issue of ingredients or active pharmaceutical ingredients or raw materials, there's a lot that we can do. But again, it does not make a lot of sense right now for us to start with that. We must, first of all, be able to scale up on the number of industries that we have, because if we have raw materials and we don't have the consumers, becomes a challenge. We need to scale up a number of industries, and then we can exploit our natural potential from the agricultural side of the nation to feed into these industries. And I have every confidence that we have what it takes to make this industry very profitable in the East African space. And on the point of maybe, again, the National Health Institute, very briefly, it is clear that the National Drug Authority would still have its role in regulating the quality of the drugs, but the key role of this National Institute of Health would be to drive the production of bankable research and bring it to the market. So it would be very clear that those two agencies would still have a place in our proposal. I thank you. Gabriel?
Before you mute,
okay.
Can you hear me now? Yes, apologies.
Yes,
There's this question from Dr. Monica Musenero, and she asks, we know that biologics go beyond those directly consumed by the health sector. Do you think that narrowing the institute to simply health may have killed the institute since its mandate in that capacity conflicts with existing entities? And how different is this from the one that you have mentioned? We're going to have every panelist respond to that, especially Professor Vinand and Dr. Nahamia.
Thank you.
Dr. Bachega.
Thank you. I'm not very well conversant with the mandate of this institution, other than bringing together all the different institutes that are involved in research in the health space. But I think it is important that the institute is, one, named appropriately, two, given the right mandate, but above everything, the institute must be funded. It must be funded, it must be given the human resources and the financial resources that it needs to be able to drive transformation in this space. Thank you very much.
All right, but yes, the National Institute of Health, the one proposed in the think piece, doesn't this also affect it, narrowing its mandate to, health, to medicines, as asked by, Dr. Musenero?
No, it is possible, given that this observation has come up, that just narrowing it to health might limit its mandate. We can have discussions and suggestions around its naming, but what is clear is that its mandate should be to bring together players on the research side of science, academic institutions, funding, and manufacturers to drive transformation in this space. But other than that, I would be open to a renaming of the institution. As CASO, I think, would be open to a renaming of the institution in order to align it with its core mandate.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Bachenga. I would like to go to Dr. Nambatia. There were actually very many questions for you, but I'd like to begin with this one from Martin Patrick. And he asks, is it really possible to come out with a killer for any virus? Scientists need to be careful with the statements they make because it affects the credibility of the thinking. And we've talked about the credibility here. If you could go right ahead and respond to that question.
Okay, actually, when we talk about natural products, people tend just to limit their thinking to plants. But there are those we call like venom. Under homeopathy, we have what we call poison. Can be snake poison, can be bee venom. Actually, if you look at ingredients and you read around, these are the classes that could be validated for such. For example, under bee venom, if you look at melittin, you can go so, and many other ingredients which have been used in those countries which are authorities in this area. The fact that Uganda has been silent, brings out an issue that people just are governed by fear. We shouldn't fear, we should read around and see what has happened elsewhere in the world. Scorpion venom, these are poisons, but when they are in particular doses, they become medicines. And we really need to get so deep into that research, because when you get into the fraternity of our traditional healers, they do all kinds of things. So I would highlight it there that just get into the literature, read around, you will be surprised at what's happening. And again, when we say natural, some things are minerals, other the animal parts. It's really broader than just the plants.
All right.
I don't know whether I should make my comment on the Institute of Health Research. Can I?
Go ahead, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment on the National Institute of Health Research as proposed. I'm heading an institution which is under Uganda National Health Research Organization. And probably we need to appreciate the challenges of hindering UNRO, the issue of funding, because some of us are under UNRO. First of all, UNRO was set up by an act of parliament, and its role is coordinate health research. Probably before thinking of another institution, it would be good to think of what is lacking in UNRO, because the mandate is not fully executed. For example, we were all supposed to be retired and get independent. For example, traditional medicine being put under UNRO, still it's not very sufficient. We should be a standalone. And actually, I'm happy to hear from Dr. Neville that we to be be catered for under pharmaceutical section. I'm learning through this webinar because we've been under UNRO waiting for that full funding, and then I'm really, so you see those gaps there. I really think UNRO Act, since it's through an act, it should be looked at thoroughly and see what is really missing. But for me, I know what is missing is due to the inadequate funding.
All right, you've highlighted funding, and since you're under UNRO, what else has hindered UNRO from carrying out its mandate? Because right now, what we're really pushing for is for thinking, in a progressive way, thinking in an unusual way. Some of the steps we'll have to take have got to be very drastic steps, because as we stated in the beginning, what would have happened if, for example, our borders were completely closed? And you know how long research takes. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately, UNRO has a director general who was not invited on this panel, but Professor Nanturia is well versed in that area. So I refer to him I believe he knows what's going on. So I wouldn't want to answer for UNRO, but I've pointed it out as one under my constituency being under there. But I know, funding, for example, to fully ensure that all of us under there, we were supposed to be gotten out, then come back on contracts, then do execute our full mandates. And for me, I know, okay, Professor Nantulia can highlight that because he's highly placed to really know how those institutions came in place.
All right. Finally, before we move from you, there was a question on the APIs, and there's a segment of that question in relation to the, to the natural. Yes, go ahead.
Actually, yeah, the APIs, most especially from the natural product sector, would start to sort of require availability of large cultivated areas from where we get the raw materials, because quality starts at that point. There would be need to look into land availability, because land is heavily fragmented, and due to lack of the substantive lab we're talking about, we can't talk to other sectors like wildlife authority or people who use chemicals on plants. So it would have to start with ensuring availability of quality herbal products, plants. We would have to ensure there is education, integrated curriculum to ensure that people are trained all the way from nursery schools to university in appreciating the role of biodiversity in these formulations, because without education, sustainability of the whole thing is defeated. And of course, making sure that we really strengthen collaborations with partners, bilateral partners that are really well positioned to support us. I mentioned South Korea, we already have an MOU with them, but we need to, I'll keep repeating, lack of this policy. Nobody will have an active MOU with you if there is no backing law. And again, the natural chemotherapeutics, traditional medicine fitting under an umbrella of, still it's not adequate. It needs to come out substantive so that it gets into the web of linking with farmers, with the lawyers, with pharmacists, But currently, the whole entity is just seen as pure, research cordon just to the laboratory, but it should be broader. And then the issue of intellectual property rights, indigenous knowledge should come in, because at the moment, indigenous knowledge is being captured under Ministry of Science, Innovation and Technology. So you can see, to me, it's a bit misplaced. So we really need to come out and have what they call a traditional medicine program, look at the value chain of farming and everything, and then we talk of APIs that are of quality.
Okay. Since you've ended on that point, let me invite Dr. Kasenene. I don't know if he's able to speak. Dr. Kasenene is a qualified medical doctor. He's a specialist in nutrition, actually nutritional, functional, and lifestyle medicine. He's also a nutrition educator and professional speaker on health, lifestyle, and well-being. He is a member of the International Association of Wellness Professionals, the Institute of Functional Medicine, and the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and many other professional associations. Dr. Kasenene, can you hear me? Okay, probably Dr. Kasenene is not able to speak at this point, but we will, if we can fix his technical issue, we'll be able to hear from him. Professor Vinand, Dr. Nambatia passed the question to you, and I know we don't have enough time to go into the details of what's going on with UNRO, but there have been suggestions that you've been listening into. If you could respond to those, and then we will move to other questions put to you.
Oh, okay. If I will start with I have 3 quick comments. Okay, let me take that one first. Now, out of the COVID pandemic, I see a great opportunity in orientating ourselves to the One Health concept. Because if we go by the One Health concept, then we can fit in many things. You take the Institute of Health that is promoting the One Health. It is the health of humans, is the health of the animals. It's the products which touch on the health of animals, health of plants, health of human beings. And then you can have a financing function within that institute, which will finance development of biologicals, development of medicines, development of diagnostics, development of cosmetics, whatever you want to do. But under the institute as a financing organ, as well as an institute that sets the agenda for research. Now, that institute needs to be funded. It needs to be funded by government. You need government funding in order to have the independence to drive the agenda. But that institute is also should be capable of mobilizing even resources from outside. This is what the National Institute for Health was meant to be. And for financing initiatives like in the natural chemotherapeutics, initiatives in virology, et cetera, et cetera. That's what it was meant to do. Now, is UNRO doing that? No. UNRO is very, very constrained because it has not been able to actually exercise the full mandate. But we are in a period of thinking out of the box. So can UNRO be addressed and you change it? I think we should be brave enough to say so, because starting a new institute will require a long process until it is recognized as an institute. Whereas we can go for an existing one and see what we can do to streamline its operations and to change its orientation so that it can deliver what we want. And what we want is an institute that can drive the development of these medicines, biologicals, medical devices, but by financing the research and development. We can do that. Let me stop at that because it requires us to think through it as we.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Two issues later.
Those three comments you wanted to make. Yes. No, go right ahead and comment on them.
I can go on. Okay. Now, amongst the opportunities, what are the specific opportunities that have been brought up by COVID? One of them is this one that I've just discussed. The idea of the One Health and using the One Health to drive the issue of the Institute of Health, but avoiding creating different institutes because at present we have got too many organizations with overlapping mandates and it's not helping us at all. And it's I am brave enough to say that even the ministries are like that. It's duplication. But if we can use the COVID experience to even drive, even advocate for government to also run in a different style rather than what it is today. Because what we have is a cabinet which is too big, a parliament which is too big, and this cannot work. But let me leave that. But I don't fear making political discussions. Now, a specific opportunity that has come up that we see already going is the president has come out very strongly in favor of getting science to drive industrialization, science to drive development, and has been brave to create it. So we have financing of initiatives for development of tools, the masks, the gowns, the sanitizers. We have heard about that. We have initiatives on vaccines against COVID. But what we are doing there is not just necessarily getting the vaccine against COVID, but getting beyond that to say, can we finance the development of national capacity for vaccine research, because diseases will come and go, and we must have a capacity to develop vaccines. This is ongoing. Equipment has been ordered. Potential vaccine approaches have been identified. Scientists have been identified, and they have started working on a vaccine against COVID. But different types of vaccine, different approaches to developing the vaccine. But we know that those approaches, later on, we shall use them for development of other vaccines. Therapeutics, yes, that is also going on, including what Grace Nambatia was discussing. It's being funded, equipment is being procured. We are working together with the Ministry of Science and Technology, the President's Office, and Monica Musenero's the department where she's the senior presidential advisor on epidemics. We are working on that. Diagnostics, the same. We are looking at different ways of diagnostics, different ways that we can reduce the cost of diagnostics, different ways of developing our own generation of diagnostics. These are opportunities which have been created by COVID. The other opportunities that have been, the opportunity that has come up is, you know that, and I was in the global financing arena for some time with the Global Fund and other organizations, and I know how much we fought very hard to say no. Let the African countries not only serve as recipients forever. They should also have a capacity to generate drugs, manufacture drugs, manufacture diagnostics, manufacture other things. And it was not easy. And we went through the TRIPS. TRIPS was presented, the TRIPS agreement. And we had a lot of input in the TRIPS agreement in shaping it not to apply a long time ago, and to shaping it to postpone and extend the period under which African countries can come on board and manufacture some of the products. Yes, this now what we have in Uganda as a result is the bubu. Now, bubu is very important. By Uganda.
All right.
Uganda, very important.
Uganda.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's use that in an even proactive way to influence access to the market by local producers. Let me stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'd like now to go to
one more, please. Sorry, there was a question about the FDA and the ongoing issues on whether we should have 2 national drug authorities, et cetera, et cetera. This is the situation. The situation is that the National Drug Authority was created in 1994 under the Minister of Health by Act of Parliament. We know that later on, the cabinet recognized that the mandate was limited. And the cabinet wanted in 2014 to turn it to expand the mandate into a national food and drug authority by adding food additives, food supplements, cosmetics, and the commercial animal feeds to the items under the organization's supervision. And the relevant laws transforming NDA into national Food and Drug Administration are today before Parliament for promulgation. But what we get is that in 2019, in October last year, Cabinet passed another resolution that in fact they should create another NDA for livestock products, so that because this other NDA is focusing on human products. The right solution is to go back to the earlier decision of cabinet to restructure NDA. Right. And this is what you do in restructuring it. You create departments or one for livestock products, one for food safety, one for agricultural products, one for human health products, one for cosmetics and herbal medicines. That's the way to do it. Over.
Thank you very much, Professor. And I know there's a lot more you could have shared on that, but we've taken note of the response you gave in the Q&A. And all panelists and participants, we will actually, document what was received in the Q&A, and it will form part of the paper that will come out at the end of this webinar. I'd like now to go to Dr. Nahamia. Since we're not doing too well on time, Dr. Nahamia, I'll just allow you to give your wrap up from the conversation we have had, and if you could highlight one or two opportunities that you now see, especially from the regulator's point of view.
Yeah, thank you very much. Come on. Yeah, wait, please.
Doctor, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity again. And all has been said. What I need to thank the panelists. Really, they have come out with the good ideas. Let us use this opportunity of COVID to move forward, to make sure that really, if in the next 5 years we can achieve, maybe produce 50%, even if we move 50% of local production, I think we would have achieved a lot, both for human and vet. Sometimes when we talk, we are now talking of One Health. We shouldn't forget about the vet. And of course, there is the issue of food safety. Sometimes we are always on emphasizing more on treatment, curative, but there is the issue of preventive. And one of the issues is that you cannot talk of public health when you're not talking about food safety. For example, now so many food chains are coming. You hear of artificial meat, artificial rice. Who is checking all that? I know Bureau of Standards is trying, but the best strategy is to move towards the Food and Drug Authority.
Okay.
Having said that, let's use COVID now with the existing laws. Make sure at least we move this agenda of local production, not only in the drugs, but also the devices. We can do a lot there. We have moved a lot there very fast. You can imagine all the masks now that the population is going to use are going to come from the local population. And really, they have done well. The production is already there. And even for now, for the pharmaceuticals, let's start. We may not start with the complicated ones. We can start with the simple molecules, and then you go on developing capacity. We shall reach there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We have now managed to get Dr. Paul Kasenene. Dr. Kasenene, if you could just highlight for us the opportunities in the natural remedies that COVID-19 has brought to the fore. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, so you just have about 2 minutes for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I really want to apologize. My video is not showing, but what we need to understand from COVID-19 is that it has been shown over and over that the people who have the best chance at fighting the virus, having a better chance of reducing risk for death, are those that have healthy bodies and healthy immune systems. And so we always know that in health, our bodies have their own natural mechanism to restore balance through a homeostatic mechanism that is so much supported by what we eat, the nutrients we put in our body. And so I think there's a unique opportunity right now for us to start thinking this way and broadly in terms of how we can move, like Dr. Nahamia said, away from curative, more towards preventive, and try and understand how we can use food as medicine, use natural herbs and things we've always had for centuries, how we can take time to study them and find a way to to start using these as one of the main ways of promoting health. Because as much as we want to promote better ways of having sustainable medication, we all know that health is not about medicine. Health is really about feeling good. And disease, we need to understand what causes disease. We need to understand what happens in our bodies for us to start feeling unwell, what happens for our immune systems to dysfunction, and put a lot of emphasis on trying to ensure that we use natural medicines. We know things like minerals like magnesium, like zinc and selenium are the three most powerful things for our immunity. And if we don't have these in adequate amounts, our immunity won't function well. We know things like vitamin C, vitamin D. There are certain herbs like echinacea and elderberry and turmeric. And there's so many things we know can really enhance our health. And so we really need to start thinking about it in this angle, how best we can use natural remedies to promote health.
Questions were asked around dosage for herbs and, getting guidance on side effects. Could you respond to that quickly?
I didn't get that question earlier, but basically one of the things that is important is that we need to standardize the way we use whatever mechanism, whether it's food or herbs or nutrients or minerals. We need to understand how they impact with our physiology, how our body metabolizes them, what are the potential side effects. So although there's always a lot of potential to use natural approaches, we still need to do it in a scientific manner, in a way that is going to allow us to know how the body will respond best. So there's a lot of need not to discard them or to shun them, but to study them and to standardize how they work. And it would be good if our Ministry of Health and NDA accepts that these can be useful ways in enhancing health, but support the study and science towards getting to understand them better.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kasenene. Dr. Okuna, I see that there's something you'd like to say. I'm going to invite Dr. Birungi first, and then we'll come to you, and you'll have your response, and you'll also give us what you have to say in closing. Dr. Birungi, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, moderator. I don't have much to say because most has been said. In my conclusion, in the 2 minutes you have given me, I just want to mention to those listening to us that this is an opportunity to understand that the human being, the human resource, the person wherever you are, whether you're in a rural area, whether you're in an urban area, you are an instrument of change for our country through what you do, whether you are a farmer, you are a doctor, you are an engineer, you can do a lot to change our country. It's an opportunity, having been woken up by the COVID-19, that like I gave you the example of agribusiness. In 2030, we are going to have $1 trillion of agribusiness GDP for sub-Saharan Africa. But only 15% of that is going to be primary agriculture. And as we have been, like Dr. Pinakasen and others have said, COVID has woken us up that we have to feed properly, we have to take care of our health, the medicines that we need have to be available, and all that is because we want this human being to be productive, want this human being to make a difference for our primary agriculture, through the milk, through the beans. Where is the rest of the money? The rest of the money is in wholesale, is in distribution, is in a retail business, is in agro-processing. So it means this COVID-19, having shown us that we cannot rely on the trucks bringing stuff from outside, whatever we can manufacture locally, be it pharmaceuticals, for livestock and for human beings, is aimed at making human being happy. So, and lastly, is just to say that because you asked me the question, what do we do with the financing? Like this National Institute of Health, like Professor Nantuli has said, I think we need to come together, that the researchers and the industrials have to come together so that some of these innovations don't end up in the lab. They come to fruition as a commercial entity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now let's go to our special guest, Dr. Okuna. Doctor?
Thank you, Gabriel, and all those who have contributed. I just wanted to bring to light that COVID-19 has given us opportunities, both in the local manufacturing, even the other commodities, in that as much as we are handling patients with COVID-19 issues, we are also continuing with our daily management of patients with diabetes, with pressure, with all these other ailments. So in terms of generic manufacturing, sincerely, they have not stopped because these other patients are still continuing. Like for the Ministry of Health, the National Medical Stores is still delivering the medicines that it has been delivering before. And now for our local manufacturers, I think we need to be strategic. We need to identify strategic partnership. We need to put in place documentation. It's not that the local pharmaceutical manufacturers as institutions. It is the way they operate. Now, if you are not pre-qualified by WHO, you cannot participate in the bigger tenders for donors. So what I'm urging local pharmaceutical manufacturers, one pharmaceutical manufacturer has succeeded in getting accreditation. Let's work hard, put in place documentation. Sometimes we do things, but we don't document. And accreditation is about documenting processes and reproducing what you say you have done yesterday. In 5 years, you should be doing the same. So let's put our documentation right, such that at any one time, when they need the data we have, like for instance, now if you ask National Drug Authority, what is the volume of the market? Because we don't disclose some of this data, it makes planning difficult. And secondly, the issue of the National Institute of Health. We need to find out, or we need to find out what the UNRO has not done and why. UNRO has got a broader view, and it is recognized in the East African community that it is the research body. So what we can do is to piggyback and see how we can put this institution as maybe a directorate, and what I think amendment of the act is accepted. And then also try to ensure that the local manufacturers access loans with less interest. If we can do that, we can start somewhere. Otherwise, to participate in the donor tenders, you have to be WHO pre-qualified. Anyone who is pre-qualified is capable of participating, and that is the limiting factor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okuna, and all our panelists. That is Dr. Bachenga, who gave us the think piece, and that think piece is going to be, enriched following the discussion we have had. Dr. Grace Nambatia. Dr. Grace, I realize I didn't have your closing remark. So Dr. Nambatia, over to you. Apologies for that.
Thank you. My closing remarks, I think let's coordinate together. Let's imagine One Health is already here, so that to really leverage on one another, to really showcase that Uganda has that competitive advantage of biodiversity, and really come out with those APIs that can quickly get in on toning down inflammation, because that's the easiest herbals can do, and really move on. Please encourage us. Don't think things cannot happen. For us, we are set to see things happening. Just support us. I'm calling upon support across the board.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Nambatia, and all our panelists, Professor Vinand Nanturia, Dr. Nahamia, Dr. Stephen Birunji, and our special guest, Dr. Okuna. We would like to have our final poll, and then we'll have closing remarks from CASO, probably the board chair, Dr. James Magara. So let's have the final poll as we bring our discussion today to a close. Okay, as the team gets ready to show our final poll, Dr. Magara, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, Dr. Magara, please, you can now give a vote of thanks and close us in prayer, because it seems like we won't be having that last poll. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating in this webinar. Over to you, Dr. Magara.
Okay, thank you very much, Gabriel. Thank you for a very, very interactive moderation. Special thanks to our panelists. We appreciate you sacrificing your Saturday morning to be with us and to really give us the benefit of your thinking. It's been very, very educative. I've learned stuff, and it has also brought certain things to the fore, which we'll try to see how we can help to carry the discussion forward. I'd like to recognize two members of our advisory team. Newton Baloy has been attending faithfully from Johannesburg. You're great to have you, Newton. I also noticed the presence of Dr. Christine Andora, who has also been on the panel, and some commissioners from the National Drug Authority. We really appreciate having you here. Some participants from Rwanda as well, so great to see you on the discussion. We will follow through as we've been doing with all the others. We will get the final think piece out in the next week or so. And we are also now arranging to have policy briefs and things like that, because we really want to see these ideas move from talking to action. And so the best we can do as a think tank is make the work of decision and policy makers easier. The think piece will also be posted on our website. If you visit our website, CASO website, you'll see the earlier ones. And also for those who missed, or if you want to refer to anyone who would be interested in the discussion, the whole webinar is available on Facebook. So you can go in there and listen the whole thing over again. Mm-hmm. Let's continue the conversation. I've been watching myself very closely what's happening between China and India. If you're following the news, they've had some skirmishes on their borders. A number of soldiers have been killed. And one of the thoughts running in the back of my mind is COVID shocked us. No one predicted COVID. What if a war erupts? What will happen? What if these two big countries go into war? What kind of scenario would it create? In future, CASO will be doing some scenario planning as well. And this is one of the things that we'd look at. How would a conflict between China and India affect the world? It would be a mega shock to the world. But we've been given the opportunity with this COVID, which has been a shock, but probably not as bad as it could get. I hope that we can use these times to really think and not just wait for another 5-10 years and remember that 10 years ago we talked about this and did nothing about it. So all of us in our different capacities. Thank you once again. Next week we'll be focusing on the ICT sector. So ICT has not been talked much about today, but almost all the other webinars have talked about ICT. So please do plan to attend same time next Saturday, and hope to see you there. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for this time to engage our thinking and to bring ideas to the fore. We thank you for our panelists and all the participants, all the questions that have come in. We now pray that you help us to not stop here, but to take it the next level, to refine our thinking, and also for those who make decisions and those who make policy, that we will move from being sluggish and begin to work actively to create a policy framework that would enable this sector to move to the next level. We thank you for this time, and we pray that you bless our weekend. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
You can make the final remarks and we close the meeting.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Magara, and a big thank you to our panelists and our special guest and everybody that has logged in for this webinar. Thank you very much. Like Dr. Magara said, if you'd like to just watch again what we have discussed here or any of the other webinars, visit the Facebook page, the CASO Facebook page. We have all that over there. But also, as a result of this discussion, the think piece is going to be enriched from the things from the discussions that came up, but also there are going to be papers that are going to come after this, and we will ensure that these are shared with the panelists, but they will be available on the CASO website. Please register for the webinar next week. We'll be looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much, and God bless you all. Till next Saturday.